How's your summer?
It was good. It was long.
I just want to comment, like in listening, the sound is really garbled. Like compared to the sound on this, it's not a good quality. Like it's hard to listen. It's people saying, huh? It's probably just a matter of, I mean, this compared to what it sounds like off of this,
Right.
in Odome.
Yeah, I don't like it.
It's not the synchronizing it. It's doable.
Yeah,
But that's like another step. Just different mic, that's all.
I like the mic.
So I mean, so fine. So then a mic over here. Yeah, why not? Mm-hmm.
The truth is probably just higher quality.
Higher quality clip-on, yeah.
No, it's a good
This is a good clip-on.
clip-on, yeah.
There are levels to these things. Sure. Are we ready? Jai Rambam Bhai Ya 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 Rambam Bhai Ya 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 Rambam Hira ya 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 Hira ya 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 Hira ya 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 Hira ya 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 Hira ya 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 ay 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 mo ay ay hey ay hey ay So last time we were exploring together what is the really the power of Elul that's reflected or expressed or perhaps even created by the shift that happens with Moshe Rabbeinu's achievement in reorienting the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be with us, and he does that with a demand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he makes, that where he says Halo belechtecha imanu v'niflinu ani v'amecha mikol ha'am asher al pnei ha'adama. And it's that belechtecha imanu which redefines the way in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu is ready to be manhig the Jewish people in a really a complete shift from what it was that he was offering when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to him, Panay yelechu v'hanichoti lach, when he says to him that he's willing to send his presence, his panim, his direction towards purpose, as we learned in Ravana Levi's Trasalya, in terms of the panim and the achor, his intention and his forward-looking, as opposed to the achor, which is in a sense the ancillary and supportive mechanisms that are the functioning of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's work in the world, the achor as opposed to the panim. We explored that to great length once in understanding the nature of coming into Eretz Yisrael and the Kimil'u Acharai that we saw with Kalev and Yehoshua, that they were ready to live in the Achor. Nevertheless, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, in offering the Panaye Lechu V'hanichoti lach, is offering a particular kind of panim, which is a guidance, which is almost a transcendental guidance to move and force and direct the people towards the achievement, which would really be basically HaKadosh Baruch Hu's achievement. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's achievement, that creation would be guided by him, and in the end express his panim. And Moshe Rabbeinu sounds like he's accepting that, and nevertheless actually is insisting on something else entirely. Namely, when he said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Im ein panecha holchin, al ta'aleinu mizeh. Okay, I've already told you that panay elechu, manichoti lach. But Moshe Rabbeinu says, no, we're not able to move from this place unless your panim are holchin, and the shift is in the distinction which he makes in the subsequent pasuk, "V'amay yivadai fo ki matzati chen beinecha ani ve'amecha lo belechtecha imanu v'niflinu ani ve'amecha mikol ha'am asher al pnei ha'adama." The shift is not panay elecho v'hanichoti lach, but rather belechtecha imanu. It's in your walking with us, so that it's not an achievement of your reflection of purpose in creation, but rather it's the joint moving ahead, which is belechtecha imanu. It's you're walking with us. It's you're walking with us, which means that there's a direct participation on our part, in our choosing and in our movement, that is inextricably related to the way that you walk, and on a certain level, this belechtecha imanu then sets up, and this is in a sense, this is where we had somewhat begun to touch last time. This sets up a very particular relationship, apparently, with Klal Yisrael, which is halo belechtecha imanu v'niflinu ani ve'amecha mikol ha'am asher al pnei ha'adama. That there's something which is a unique function that we have in the Bria, which is related to and actually defined by this belechtecha imanu, which is something which of course we've explored so often, right? I mean, and we've seen that it's actually the definition of how Kadosh Baruch Hu defines the nature of what Klal Yisrael is, from the beginning of his speaking to Avraham Avinu in his Lech Lecha to Avraham, through Hitalech Lefanai Ve'yeh Tamim, that there needs to be a helicha that's Lefanai, that through which you become Tamim, that there's something of a leading of the way which HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls upon us to do in this mysterious fashion, at least mysterious in a divine conception, which has an assumption about HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he's going to be above and determining how things unfold, but instead, rather, there's a joinder between our process and discovery and his expression that is mamish the very definition of what it means to be the children of Avraham, and ultimately through Yitzchak and into Yisrael, the ability to walk and to follow the struggle and the movements of personal achievement as being the definition of what it means to be a human being in a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so this really is definitive, right? We've seen this. Just want to remind us of elements of this. This really is definitive. It's definitive of the way God says that it is for you in terms of the Kriyat Shem at the beginning of Vayikra, that defines the difference between a people that is experiencing life as a calling, and that calling from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in a sense, responding and participating with the first calling of Avraham Avinu, who called out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name when he came to Eretz Yisrael, which, as we explained in the past, was not prayer of bakasha in the usual sense of prayer, but it was a calling of expression and of relationship, which is what naming is about. That calling of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Moshe in the beginning of Vayikra is a reflection of Avraham Avinu's calling to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which was in Lech Lecha, the very beginning of Abraham's task, and defines and distinguishes it from there, that Kriya, as opposed to the Keri of the Asher Korcha B'derech, which is established there as being the difference between the Nevuah of Moshe and the Nevuah of Bilam, the Keri, which is a sense of the happenstance, which is a question again of, are we walking this together, or is this something which in a deep sense, is happening to me. Happening to me. It's like happening to me. God governing everything and moving things where they need to go, but it's just happening to me. That's the sense of a loss of a connection, as opposed to the Lech Lecha Iman. Right? I'm just looking right now at vignettes from things that we've explored. That yeah.
That's a real shift in how I've always understood Keri, like in the Tochacha, which generally is defined as something which just is a mikra, and it just happens. What I hear you saying now is that there's another level of Keri, which is something that's happening to me, that even if it's not happenstance in the sense of meaningless purposelessness, but it is in the sense of eliminating my agency.
Right.
So therefore, it's a different form of meaninglessness.
Yes.
It may have a perfect order and stay there and maybe going somewhere, but I am sort of meaningless in it if it's just happening to me.
I am happy. It's a different.
Right. I am happy.
Right. It shifts. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm incidental to the process. Right?
Yeah.
As opposed to
It's a different level
lacking.
I thought we've explored that, but yeah, we need to spell that out more. That like that the.
I don't believe we've.
Okay, I mean, well, so
aspect.
then let's just take a look at that. I mean, because that's exactly what's going on here.
That's why
It's exactly what's going on here. Okay, so we'll just tease that out a little bit. I think I don't know. But some of the stuff just goes on in here. It's like Hashmei lo aznecha ma shepicha omer, and it kind of just stays like that. But yeah, but absolutely. So I mean, just understanding that is crucial. If we'll just be mitakev on that for a moment, absolutely, because the nature of the bris, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu establishes with Avraham Avinu, is that there's a progressive and evolutionary discovery that he's going to undergo, which makes creation a part of him, and him a part of creation. I'll put it like this, and it's quite parallel to what is the primal error, which Adam HaRishon makes, but which is defined into the nature of creation as being other than that. So let's take a look at this, because it's very valuable, and I guess needs to be teased out a little, explained out a little bit more. The nature of Keri is, yes, on one hand, it's that there's a disconnect, but there are different levels of disconnect. There's a level of disconnect in which you're simply living in randomness, and there's a level of disconnect in which you are a governed creature, a puppet that is simply playing out some other plan, but has no opportunity for personal achievement. So basically, your life, in that sense, becomes a happenstance. It's a Keri in a very dissociated and disempowering and okay, there's another word in there. Being not identified with yourself. Alienating. It's complete alienation, right? And the reason is that it's complete alienation is because it's a lack of having any kind of an ownership, at all. Period. Not even an ownership on myself. I can't have an ownership on anything because I'm not a acting being, an acting choosing being, and so that creates a Keri in the sense of an inability to actually grow into ownership of self, in which there's a real connection between my life and who I am, who I desire to be. It's not there. It's not there. And that is the threat of Panay Elechu v'Hanichoti lach. They can't get it together. They keep falling. So the solution is, I will just guide the way.
Do it for you.
I'll just do it for you. I'll guide the way. Let me exactly the temptation of every parent. And every parent, yeah. Let me here. You're not exactly. Let me tie your shoes for you. Exactly. Which is that error is always going to root an alienation on the part of the person who was the subject of that sort of intervention.
It's the free enough. Let me just get this done. You're getting it done in terms of the goals.
Okay, right. Okay, so this, yeah, this is why from the very outset, right? Hakadosh Baruch Hu, when he takes man into Gan Eden, we have explored this in the past. When he takes man into Gan Eden, where it says that Hakadosh Baruch Hu vayikach es ha'adam vayinicheu began Eden, that likicha immediately Chazal intervene. It's so beautiful. You see the difference between the Torah Shebichtav and the Torah Sheba'al Peh. In the Torah Shebichtav, God just, takes man and puts him into Gan Eden. But in the Torah Sheba'al Peh, so Rashi immediately says, wait, it doesn't mean that. What it means is lekacho b'dvarim. Lekacho b'dvarim, and he was mefate him so that he would desire to go into Gan Eden. And told him how beautiful it is there. B'dvarim na'im, Rashi says with an aleph, told him about how beautiful it is. That is such it's like a classic example of the shift between a Torah Shebichtav, which is going to define your existence for you, and the Torah Sheba'al Peh, which calls upon you to define your existence. Invites you in. And the implication of it was clearly that man had to be empowered to refuse, which is what he's being informed from the very outset. Being informed of that from the very outset. So that likuchim, right, which this was from the Shiurim on Kiddushin, right, that likuchim becomes the source of ki yikach ish isha, which Chazal say means ki yikach velo sheyakiach. It's got to be that he takes her, but he takes her in a way in which she is fully participant in that joinder, and not that he takes her. I believe they're learning it from the original likicha of Adam and Gan Eden. It's got to be miratzona, which is the beginning of Masechta Kiddushin, that it has to be midata, right? It has to be midata. Ishan betula niseit. That we actually start with the woman, even though what we seem to be talking about is Ha'ish Mekadesh. No, Ha'ish Mekadesh is the second parak. First, there needs to be a clarity as to what exactly is going on here, which is Dafka Niseit as opposed to Niknes, right? Niknes as opposed to Kohn, etc. Right? So, in any case, that defines the nature of bris, which you see is the difference between the real difference is between bris and keri. Right? I mean, the keri is in the dissociation, right? In the non-relationship, which is the implication of keri, is at risk here. Is at risk here. Basically, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is threatening is that the Jewish people will be like other peoples who are not involved in the bris. That bris which sets us up, and now we'll define it a little more, which sets us up as being the element of the creation which needs to be awake and aware to its patterns, but not confined by them, but rather is devoted to the emergent processes that come of them, in which we have myriad options open to us as to where that will go. Those myriad options that are open to us when we listen carefully are all fitting to the pattern. But as we all know, with all emergent properties, there are many ways in which the emergent property could emerge. It's infinite by virtue of the many infinite combinations that are possible within that pattern. There are many things that could come out as properties that come out of the givens of a certain chemical or physical situation, and the question will be whether that's just a reflex mechanical next emergent element, or whether there's an agency of the participant in that in which it becomes defined. The very beginning of that, as we've seen, the very beginning of that is the very beginning of that is the grass. But the grass is simply the of Yismach Hashem b'Masav, right? Exactly. But that grass itself doesn't actually grow until there's an Adam, right? Meaning that until the story of the grass, right, which we've talked about in the past about Kodesh Baruch Hu's simcha at the grass being nosei kal v'chomer be'atzmo, right? This sense of the be'atzmo, it looked within itself and discovered the calling, which is the calling that is going to be its ability now to move by defining itself in its individuation, right? You know what we're talking about in this, right? So that, So that is only possible and only activated by Adam, because it's specifically the grass which the pasuk says was waiting at the terem point, unexpressed. Wait a minute, but that was the big celebration. The big celebration was the grass. I know it was. But the big celebration of the grass is really, let's be real about this, is really the investment of the consciousness of Adam, who is able to participate in the creation. So basically the grass is just simply a definition of the nature of the tefillah of Adam HaRishon.
He actually makes an experience as opposed to just...
The truth is the grass is not conscious.
What?
I mean, the truth is that the consciousness is with the addition of Adam HaRishon, and is really with the addition of tefillah. So it's that shift, right? It's that shift which makes the possibility of Lech Lecha Imanu, right? It's there. HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls upon Adam HaRishon for it. His error is in taking it to what's called kitzutz b'netiot, which is another vegetable mashal of defining myself out of creation and experiencing myself as being really a stranger to the planet, uprooting oneself. It becomes uprooted. That's kitzutz b'netiot is the
other.
Acher is also a mekatze.
Can I just clarify a bit? Yeah. So what I hear you saying is that there's like a process of creation and then a certain law-abiding posture, which is really its own form of carry. And,
yes.
And then an invitation to partnership or agency, participation in the unfolding creation,
yes.
Which either has to hold in that sort of dynamic tension, or can take that last step you just described, which is there's no partnership any longer. I am the sole agent, and that's what we call kitzutz.
Correct.
Where does that first
come from? It comes. It's.
When I've seen it in our I'm hearing you use it in
a broader sense, because in among the Mekubalim, that becomes the description of the in Kabbalistic language of the separating of the Malchut from the rest of the Binyan.
Mm-hmm. Which is exactly what this is.
What we're describing, right? Because the Malchut, one of the names for Malchut was in this week's Parsha in the Zohar, by the way. But one of the names for the Malchut in the Shechina is Ani. Ani, Aleph Nun Yud. Is Ani. It's one of the names of the Malchut. So in separating the Ani, and separating my personal definition and identity from the rest of the pattern of creation, so I can do that, but I become a mean. Become a mean. I simply become one specific species that's now defined itself out of the entirety of the pattern. That's what it means to become a mean, which Chazal identify with Adam HaRishon as being moshech ba'or laso. It's the same thing. Right. Being moshech ba'or laso is that he is not interested in a bris.
And he puts the barrier back up.
He puts the barrier back up because I experience my identity and my possibility for participating with you, God, in creation by separating myself from you and creating myself as I choose. And that's the opposite extreme, right? Of really, it's the opposite of extreme of the hanichoti lach. But if you're experiencing a Kodesh Baruch Hu's panay elechu v'hanichoti lach, so then your reaction becomes, I will have no part of this. I don't have any part of you. I want to be me. I want to be me. But the error, the delusion, really, it's delusional. That becoming me means separating myself away from and stepping apart from the reality of the all, of which I'm a piece. I mean, if you like, oh, wait a minute, you got to become pretty short-sighted and limited in your vision to experience yourself as being completely able to be cut off from all of the evolution which has led up to you, all of the processes, chemical, physical, biological, evolutionary, that you actually are made of, that are built into the patterns of who you are, that are participant in the choices that you make. What are you going to? You're going to ignore that? Are you going to ignore that? That's the optical delusion that Einstein talks about. That people live in optical delusion. They think that the nature of the universe doesn't automatically imply that you are a piece of something larger than yourself. That's Kitzutz Banatiot in an attempt to establish the Ani as being a completely separated entity. And we do it all the time, and we're doing it all the time. We're doing it all the time. Every time we don't listen because of a fear of what we might hear. Every time we turn our backs on where we've come from, rather than seek to derive from where we've come from indications and guidance for our next step. Anytime we look at the world and feel as if we're a stranger in it, who needs to now establish himself so that he will have an eternal, and memorable place in this, right? Anytime you think that, anytime you think you are making yourself of your own, with all those implications I just described. Anytime you look at your kids and feel estranged from them because they're not going the way that you were, intending of panay elechu v'hanichoti lach. Any of that is all of those are bechinot of kitzot banatiot. You can see.
You're sure about that?
You can see. You can see. I can say it now because they're coming around.
Of their own accord. That's the whole point, right? No, actually, it's not. It's not.
It's true.
Because
it is
not.
not.
Have a plan.
It is
like
true.
Saying,
and you know what? You really that kind of dissociation and alienation is a co-creation of the attitude of your attempt to impose. Yeah, but as we all know in ourselves, I mean, we've all got pieces that are more or less identifiable of where we've come from, right? But okay. In any case, it's that delusion, right? Which in a beautiful piece, right, Einstein calls the optical delusion. An optical delusion, an optical delusion, he calls it, because the optical delusion, the exact quote where he...
Is that said derived from sight? Meaning,
Yeah.
visually, I appear as other.
Correct, exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly. You see yourself as a discrete entity, which is why the first thing that's described in terms of Chava's temptation is what she sees. Because seeing is both the problem and the solution. Re'eh is the solution to her seeing the tree as a discrete entity. Instead, look, right? As it has to do with Parshas Re'eh. I don't want to go in, but okay, as long as we can enjoy the wholeness of this, and I don't want to lose you in the sea of associations. But that's clearly what's going on. Her seeing, in that local sense of seeing that is nechmad, which means I'm looking at this in order to see what I can take from it. That's already she's in the Eitz Hadat. Because instead of seeing how she participates with this in a relationship of love and joinder and growing together as part of this universe, so that seeing as nechmad, as opposed to chen, is really the root of all evil. Of all evil, if we would identify where all evil is, it's there. It's there. It's there in that dissociation from the patterns that are real and true, and from which I'm called to speak my voice in my personal agency of creation and of formation and of sculpting my life from within that. That's why Chazal say from the pasuk, Mesir ozno bishmoa Torah, gam tfilato to'eva. That's horrible. Mesir ozno bishmoa Torah. You turn your ear away from listening to Torah. Your tefillah is a to'eva. But of course it's a to'eva, because a to'eva is literally the disgrace, the disgust, which is why should it be disgusting? I mean, just because basically what you're doing in praying without listening to where existence speaks its voice. If you're praying without listening to where existence speaks its voice, so basically you are creating a reactivity of creation, which is that of disgust.
You reject creation.
Exactly. Your rejection of creation leads to the rejection of creation of you, and your tefillah is disgusting. Like, who wants to listen to you? Because you have, I have something I want existence, and I couldn't give about you. I'm concerned for me. I mean, don't you care about me? Why? What do you mean care about? I mean, are we together in this? Are we together in this? That's why the first tefillah of Adam HaRishon is the crucial point of definition for the deshaim, for those grasses which can only grow by there being a aware creature that is an agent of change, or an agent of change. Right. This sets the whole context for tefillah, which begins, as you point out correctly, which begins with hakaras hatov. Yodea shehem tzorich la'olam, not tzorich le'atzmo, tzorich la'olam. And then is mispalel. That mispalel being the voice of this guidance, right, of a channeled and mutual movement, in which there's this the reciprocity, right, of bris. So you see what Moshe Rabbeinu was doing here. Right? We talked last time about the shift from the all into the particular last time, right, and how this parallels Gan Eden. And now what we're looking at is how Moshe Rabbeinu was, in a sense, declaring, if you leave it, Panay Elechu v'hanichoti lach, then it's going to end up basically a world in which there is no actor. It's just you guiding things and making them go the way they need to go. So it's that. I mean, this is this is like so powerfully the case. I want to make a deep investigation into this, but just to complete where we were last time, and then I'll tell you where I think a next step is. But where Hakadosh Baruch Hu then hears from Moshe Rabbeinu was asking him, right, as we pointed out last time, that he asks, he's asking of him, Hodieni na et drachecha ve'ida'acha leman imtza chen be'einecha, right? That's what he asked for. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Panay elechu v'anichoti lach, that is not the appropriate response. Okay, fine. It's not the hopeful response. But you see, the Chumash is just so beautiful. Like to see how it's mamish like Gemara, in a sense. You know what I say? Like if you see it this way, it's like he puts out a hava amina. Then there's it's the right. There's shakamataya. Then there's the wrong answer. There's a masao matan. There's a masao matan going on, but that masao matan is crucial. And it's even by the way, in the Mesilas Yesharim, that's exactly how the Ramchal describes tefillah in Chasidus. He talks about tefillah in Chasidus, and he says he's no save and no tain with the Kodesh Baruch Hu.
Abraham is the paradigm for that.
Paradigm is who was the first explicit prayer. Is no save and no tain. But the omek of the no save and no tain is exactly that. There is a back and forth. It's not, Kodesh Baruch Hu, in advance, so to speak, and this is what the Chumash shows you time and again. In advance that a Kodesh Baruch Hu is not necessarily going to stick to his original position. That's an amazing thing. That's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing to someone who's got a static conception of the divine. It's not an amazing thing to someone who is in the experience of participant creation. But it's mamish like he asks for something. Kodesh Baruch Hu, so to speak, offers it to him. This isn't but so beautifully. Im ein panecha holchim al taleinu mizeh. Look, first of all, good. What you said is good. That's right. But it's a total masao matan. The whole nature of masao matan is that we're building something together. I mean, again, if you look at masao matan as contextual, so I'm trying to twist his arm.
That's not what becoming related.
Not at all. But if you look at masao matan as there's a broader context which we're in. The way nowadays they do gishur. It's like, let's discover the common interest here. I understand what we're at odds in terms of the express details, but okay, let me hear that. But okay, so totally. He's like it's almost like
delineates the shared space.
Yeah, it was like reflective listening. Okay, this is yes, I heard you say. you're going to be walking, and you're going to be guiding us. This is very good. No. This is very good. But could I add now? But that's not going to define the creation of matzati chen beinecha. Do you remember I was talking about chen, right? Let me please, by the way, remind you. I asked, was there any response to that? I mean, we don't want to create another world of nechmad, where man is going to be in a situation where he feels the need to grab, because there's no chen. So only ki matzati chen be'einecha nivamecha lo b'lechecha imanu. Mikol ha'am asher al pnei ha'adama. Just a beautiful, really invitation to the Jewish people to fulfill its task as in the stewardship of this journey. Really, it's so. I mean, it's just so. It's so definitive. So definitive of everything. Lech lecha of I have. This is like as an aside, but I'm wondering about this Yirat Atzmo Ki'ilu Shu Omed Lifnei Hashchina. And Yirat Atzmo Omed Lifnei Hashchina, which is the condition for tefillah. It's the condition. If you're not there, then all the words you say they're not tefillah. They're just not tefillah. You have to be roas atzmo omed lifnei hashchina. And one of the aspects of omed lifnei hashchina might not necessarily be omed lifnei hashchina as facing each other. But I wonder if it might not be a reference back to hithalech lefanai ve'yatami. You're showing the way. You're the vanguard. You're the Omed Lifnei Hashchina. I wonder. Right. Okay. But okay. So that's there's something there which deserves a place somewhere in the in the awareness. Okay. In any case, I guess the camera wants to start walking ahead. Its leg. It looks a little bit like Netivot. Looks like its leg broke. It's got its own mind.
It was a 7.2 on the Richter scale. Everybody had.
What? We're still back. Okay, we'll put that one aside then. But right. No, it's beautiful. I mean, it's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu asked for.
But it's not like that. It's directly related to the pasuk because Moshe ties together these two things in what seems at first glance to be a very strange. Oh, and by the way, I want to make sure that nobody else gets Shrat Shechina.
Right.
My kasher, like what? But here, it sounds to me that what he's saying is that this is not exclusive in the sense of we're going to get a monopoly on this relationship. What it is this is a new mode of relationship emerging in the world, and that there's a mistake. We keep using this term elsewhere, so I'll use it. There's a certain religious mentality that the presence of God is derived from following the rules, right? As opposed to the rules setting the pattern for a person's consciousness to be omed lifnei Shekhinah, in the sense you said of being the emergent edge of the presence of God in the world. And there's such a fine distinction there because there's a tendency in humanity to say, well, wait, I heard what you said. You mean you get rid of the rules and that's when God emerges? Like, no, that's not what I said. Right? But I think that's the relationship between the two parts of Moshe Rabbeinu's request.
Yes, I hear you. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, I've got something else.
This might be good for the next
for sitting together. Yeah.
The next couple hours. Right. I'm noticing in myself that in the two poles, I'm reasonably comfortable. Meaning, okay, follow the rules. Like, okay, I know how to do that. I can follow the rules, and okay, I'll either do it or I'll rebel. But I'm okay there.
The parameters are clear.
Yeah, I'm comfortable there. And then in the other pole, like, it's yours. Take it. Like, okay, I'll scrap and I'll fight and I'll do it, and I'll sink or I'll swim or I'll be depressed or whatever. But I'm okay with that because nobody's fault but mine.
Right.
But there's I'm noticing in myself a real chalishu dadat in the middle.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I don't know what to do.
That's right.
I don't know theoretically there's tremendous potential and it's wonderful and glorious in relationship, and practically it's like what now? I just feel like bumping my head against the wall, not sure what's right, what's wrong, where to go. It's a much more.
What is the relationship between my personal volition and will and this listening? Just listening.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just had here's a funny example. So I hear the it's a blur and it's like a tension, and how can I meld those, hold those. It's like it's in a sense it's like a funny example, but it's like something that I've learned a great deal from my wife. So I'm looking for someone to do like sort of secretarial work, like this like stuff that's just needs taking care of that I don't take care of. Right? So I said, what do you think would be good for that? So immediately she says, well, let's think of all the people who need money. It like just caught me so off guard. What a beautiful way to look at it. It's an indication. Instead of like, let's look at right. Right. Now, of course, there will also be the obvious question of who's going to be qualified.
Right, but you define the question by.
But the definition of the question is what's the need of the Bria right now, in the sense of like what's out there. Now, you don't have to take that as like the literal and end all definition of how you look for someone who works for you, but it's just like it really threw me around as an example of that kind, that on a certain level, right? I'm just trying to turn this into all parts of the practice. Exactly. It's like there's your participant in a breadth of a reality that is in interrelation with the interrelationship of its different parts, and that itself is party to the nature of what your will is. This is, Chazal say this in so many ways. For instance, where Rashi says, "Vayichulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chol tzva'am." So the Medrash says, and Rashi brings that kol abrios, kol anivraim nivru l'da'atam, and it's the Gemara, right? L'da'atam, komasam, v'tzivyonam. So Rashi explains in the Gemara, which he quotes in the Chumash, explains that everything in creation was created according to its vision or awareness of itself, its koma, its full stature, its sivyonam, and its will. And its will, lashon tzvi, is a lashon. Right. It is a lashon of acceptance and of will. Everything was created in a dialogue with the Kodesh Baruch Hu offering existence to you, and you responding with your desire, which is obviously inane. How could you be having a desire if you're not there yet? We're talking about creating you. But you see how profound a description of exactly this is. It's a description of every moment. It's a description of a conscious process which is crucial to the nature of creation. If you think of it chronologically, but if he's not there, so how could you be talking to him? Aren't you talking about making him? Didn't Chazal get it that you have to be there in order to be talked to? Like, who's there? They are describing something which is deeper than chronology, describing something which is the essence of the reality. The essence of the reality is that I can talk to you before you exist and ask you what would you like to be. How can you do that unless there's something there which is the definition of what creation is itself? It's not that he did something to something, this is a description of the nature of creation itself, which is what Chazal are describing in terms of Adam as being a mispalel aleim. Like we've talked about in the past, he's praying for rains that he's never seen. How the heck does he know what to pray for? Well, why wouldn't he know what to pray for? I mean, after all, is the Bria something other than him? These are only accessible as states of consciousness. They're not accessible as discursive depictions. It's like it's mamish it's a way of being. And that like funny little example, which may or may not seem very practical, I hold is the deepest. It's the deepest practice. I've seen it so many times. It's like the deepest practice. The way people show up when you're doing something that are exactly, what you're doing fits exactly the need they have. And when you do it that way, instead of trying to control the way it comes about, I've seen both paths. I don't want to go into personal stuff, but like I don't know. I don't have to be too personally revealing, but I've seen both stuff, and I can tell you that that's the way it works. You listen for a desire. You're attentive to the desire. You open your mouth about that desire. It needs to be enunciated. It does need to be enunciated. That's part of the establishment of the consciousness, and let things happen. Let the people show up. Listen carefully. It's the way of Alechtecha Imanu. The language of Chazal for that is Shechina, and you'll see there if you look up in it's Reish Ayin Hey in the Zohar in Parshas Kitetse. It was a gift. It was a gift to Shabbos. I didn't read the Zohar. I just happened to be in a shul where I didn't have anyone to talk to, and I noticed the sefer, which is Mikraot Gdolot HaBahir. It's very lovely. So I just opened it, and I guess because the person who had been, in it had been in Parshas Kitetse, and the feature of this Mikros Gedolos is that it brings the Zohar, according to the Psukim. And it had this whole description there of the Shechina as ani and as shame. So, gosh, that's exactly it. Because it was talking about the Motzi Shem Ra, and why the Motzi Shem Ra is Megarish the Shechina. Because of this claim of infidelity. Right? But without going into the whole Zohar, the point is like that. That's the nature of the Shechina, this Kriyat Shem, which is the formation of the Ani. So to be Omed Lifnei HaShechina is to have all of it present. This is a walking together. With this, you can understand also much better this idea of Moshe Rabbeinu was asking Hodieni Nas Drachecha, as we explained last time, and also another piece, which now I'd like to add, which is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's response, besides the Ani Avir Kol Tuvi, which itself, I think we did talk about that last time. I think Ani Avir Kol Tuvi, right? A little bit. Then what he does is and the Psal Lecha, which we explored last time. Then what he does, and now we're moving on. Then what he does is Vayavor Hashem al Panav, Vayikra. He's calling out Vayikra b'Shem Hashem, which according to the Perush we'll go with right now, that apparently is the Targum, but there's different opinions as to how to read the Targum in this, but there are Rishonim who say this explanation that it was God calling out his name, and others have it that Moshe was calling out God's name. But the beautiful ambivalence of the pasuk is exactly what we're talking about, is who's calling whose name. Well, There's Avram Avinu calling Hashem's name, and there's Hashem calling Moshe Rabbeinu by his name at the beginning of Vayikra, and now we have Vayikra b'Shem Hashem. Where are we holding? Whose turn is it? And Chazal then say that Vayikra b'Shem Hashem is Her'alo Ilmale Mikra Kasuv, Rabbi Yochanan Ilmale Mikra Kasuv. If it hadn't been written, man, we could not say this. Could not say this. Nita'ate v'kodesh ro'ol b'talis. Ve'amad k'shliach tzibur ve'her'alo seder hatfila. I believe that the ve'her'alo seder hatfila is embedded in this ambivalence about who's calling who. Who's calling who? Wasn't this about Chaim? Yeah, it's about Chaim. So, who's who in the Chaim? That's all it is. Can you walk with me? That's Seder Tefillah. That is Seder Tefillah, Nekudah. Then the Shloshesrei Midos HaRachamim are simply the gilui of the Lech Techa Imanu. Meaning that it's the way in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu defines what it means to be Holech Imanu, which is the next exploration I'd like to make. Like how does that work? But notice it's like I don't really know what to do with this yet. But like, just notice that the 13 Midos HaRachamim, if they are Seder Tefillah, it's not that he was Marelo Seder Amiras Yud Gimel Midos HaRachamim or Seder Amiras HaSlichos. He was Marelo Seder Tefillah, meaning that this is the definition of there being a Seder Tefillah, which is beautiful, because that there's a Seder and there's a Tefillah is exactly that. There's a Seder, there's an order, there's a pattern, and there's your Tefillah, which is only a tefillah if it's a tefillah sheyesh bo chidush, where there's something that's happening to you in your own development, which you're now expressing and enunciating in this contact. The Seder HaTefillah. Seder HaTefillah. It's not the Yud Gimel Midos HaRachamim. The Yud Gimel Midos HaRachamim, according to this, are the definition of the Seder HaTefillah, which is perfect, of course, because there are Yud Gimel Bakashos. So there's definitely something going on with that definition of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Yud Gimel Bechinos that we're aligning with during the Seder HaTefillah. And this, it's got to be. It's got to be. I never saw anyone say it out. And I haven't found the makor yet. I have to be in a bad mood in some shul somewhere and pick up a book that I wasn't intending to read to find it, I think. But that's, to me, that's a major discovery. I wasn't in a bad mood, actually. I was pretty happy. It's just very beautiful. They're really very, very beautiful Kehillah. Yeah, there's something there, right? And I don't think it's just a matter of like darshaning, it's ahava, it's echad, etc., etc. No, there's like, these are really different aspects of the same thing. But that it's Seder HaTefillah is exactly what just got defined here. This is it. What are you doing, God? I'm praying. It's just what you asked for, isn't it, Moshe? Halo b'lechtecha imanu. That I'd really love to work out, without it being like a forced drash, but to see how these really are reflected, in the way of the 10 midos, the sfirot, and the repetition of the nehi, which is the way it works in the Yud Gimel Bakashos. which one's where. Anyhow, this is a project ahead, but there's something going on here with Seder. Just realize that. Okay. That was what I want to share with you. I'd like to make completion of this. And I think that would really be a worthy investment of exploration. Where in my life have I seen the listening, and where in my life have I seen the doing, and how the interplay between those can be developed and amplified in a way in which my own personal evolution of identity is something which is really embedded in this kind of a chain of Lech Lecha Imanu. One comment I do want to make about it, and it came up for me when you pointed out, Mike, about the the getting it right. So a medrash that we've explored in the past in the Yerushalmi about Shalu lechochma chotem ma'onsho, shalu lenevuah chotem ma'onsho, shalu Torah, shalu kodesh baruch hu. So we've explored that in various expressions. But the conclusion of that medrash, right, is Hahu dichtiv, tov v'yashar Hashem, al kein yorech hatayim baderech. And this funny statement, right, of the Gemara there. Lama hu tov bishvil shu yashar. Lama hu yashar bishvil shu tov. Which is exactly that same kind of, where do you start? Well, he's yashar because he's tov. He's tov because he's yashar. So I think part of the meaning of this is what we're talking about here. If there's no yashar, then there really can't be tov. And if there's no tov, then there's no meaning in the yashar. Which means that if there's no yashar, there can't be tov because there's no standard by which to measure yourself by. So what does it mean that you have fully lived? What does that mean? What are you judging yourself according to? That it felt good? That you were exhilarated? That it was pleasurable?
Everybody says it's great.
That everybody's looking at you and saying you're a Gewalt man. Like what will be the standard to measure that it was tov? And because, as we explained last time, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Okay, you're asking Hodieni na drachecha. So ani avir et kol tuvi al panecha, which I told you means, right, in the Rambam and in the Morah, right? We talked about this right there. I am going to show you. I'm going to expand your awareness to the point where you will be able to contact in your awareness kol tuvi. Kol tuv means tiv'ehem v'kishreihem shel kol hanivraim. Your awareness will expand now to touch all of that. So the tov, right, is really the all of existence, which is accessible, expressed, manifest to us. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says. If you're going to want to learn the Lech Lecha Imanu, that it should be a real Lech Lecha Imanu, then you've got to have a very broad awareness. Because the more local you are, the less Lech Lecha Imanu you'll be able to be. You've got to be able to expand your awareness. You've got to be able to touch as much of the creation as is humanly possible, which is what he says to me, Irani Adam Bachai. But Kol Tuvi I can show you. It's like you can only really pray from that place, is from that place of Kol Tuvi Lefanecha. Because otherwise, how do you know what the Bria really needs? I mean, I know that there's someone who needs money, and so therefore, okay, but like, could we make that bigger? How big could we make that? You know, to really touch what the creation needs and what my participation and guidance of that is going to be. So the Seder Tefillah can only emerge out of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's being Maria to Moshe called Tuvi. You see how that works? Right? You see, like it's got to be that way. That's why the real Yesod is Hakaras HaTov. But Hakaras HaTov in the deepest sense of Hakaras HaTov. The way there was a Hakaras HaTov from Moshe Rabbeinu. Full Hakaras HaTov. Full Hakaras HaTov, which means a full awareness of what is, what exists, so that you can speak from there, speak for it, and guide it from there. Seder Tefillah must come out of there. Must come out of there. So therefore, there cannot be a Tov unless there's some Yashar, unless there's some sense of a Yashar. In other words, unless there's some sense of the realness and the order and the pattern of existence and its Yosher, there can't be a defining of Tov. You see how these interplay with each other? No, Zaniyavir Kol Tuvi, the Rambam says it must be that he's talking about the entirety of creation. But because you also, not just, the Rambam brings the Pasuk, right? The Yaras Hashem's Kol Asher Asa, Hine Tov Me'od. But the point is that you also can't define what is Tov in a real way unless there's a seeing of the entirety of the picture. So that's only Moshe Rabbeinu has that. But if you don't have the Yashar behind the Tov, then all the Tov is going to become is the kind of Tov which is the Eitz Hadat Tov Vara Tov, which is define it basically like what works for me, what doesn't work for me. It works for me. Yeah, like let's check his qualifications. See if he serves my purposes. Only. Right? Well, you know, that's how it'll boil down to the way, you know, what's good for me, what works for me, what's pleasurable for me, where do I get my greatest advantage? Okay, but if there's no Yashar, so then there really is no Tov in any deeper sense. Yeah, there's nothing to measure against. But, and here's the caveat of that, right? But if there's no Yashar, there's no Tov. Why is he Tov? Because he's Yashar. But why is he Yashar? Because he's Tov. It's just so beautiful. It's just. Do you see the in other words, it's exactly this. If all there was the order, without his deep desire to share existence, then what would it mean? It would just become a creation of, the robotic, mechanical do-gooders. Why? Because they want to be Yashar. Not because they want to be good, but because they want to be Yashar. They want to get in the program. But to be Tov is mamish to live the fullness of existence and to participate in it. So if you have no Yashar, then you can't have Tov. But if you have no Tov, in other words, if it's not about sharing the goodness of existence and of being, then the Yashar is just, what?
No soul.
There's no soul to it. There's no soul to it. There's no life to it. It's just being Yashar. So this was, if I could share this, so in this, this is like something you experience this. In this neighborhood where I was, I didn't say the name of the neighborhood, did I? Good. Okay, so in this neighborhood where I was, there's actually two shuls, because I have mishpacha in the neighborhood. So there's one shul which I sometimes go to when I go to this neighborhood, which is very Yashar, very Litvish Yashar, and I'm always really uncomfortable in there because it's like largely a product of certain Chozrim B'Tshuva institutions, plus the people who organize those institutions. And so everyone in there is like trying to be Yashar, according to somebody's standard. But nobody really knows exactly what the standard is and how they're supposed to fit with that, because they can never possibly fit with that because they didn't grow up in the system that they're trying to fit themselves into as being a part of in perfect Yashrus. So everyone just feels very uncomfortable. It's like everyone's uncomfortable with themselves. And then this is like Yashar without Tov. This mamash Yashar without Tov. And then it's this. So the shul where I was this time, it's like this little shtibel and this place has that other place is like they have a really nice building, etc. This place is just in a caravan, and a lot of them are Russians, and it's an Ashland community, which is all about, like the only reason you have anything is in order to be able to give it, to share it with someone else. It's all about the Tov. So my wife says to me, I don't know, I just felt really comfortable there, even though there was there wasn't particularly anyone to talk to, and I had much more cultural commonality in the other place, but there's something just really comfortable about it, It's just like happy, laughing, connecting, it's okay. There's a little vodka here, and there's a little, it's like this kind of feeling of Tov. That's where you can identify. So it's okay, but it's a Tov with the backdrop of the Yashar. It's got to be a Tov with the back of the Yashar. But the Yashar has to always be with the backdrop of the Tov. Right? So to put it into this context, right, in order to create the reality of tefillah, so there needs to be a awareness of the Yashar and a participation in the Tov. And so HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he responds to the person who's seeking to do tshuva, right, and responds to him, so it's Tov v'Yashar Hashem, Hakein Yorech Hatayim Baderech. He's Tov and he's Yashar. There's a direction, and there's a purpose in that direction. The purpose in that direction is to share the Tov. It's not that you should be Yashar. It's that you should experience Tov. It's not you should be Tov. So you should experience Tov. Participate in Tov. Okay. Comments, participations, touch points.
I want to say that the addition that we made this week, really about tefillah and everything like that, works with what we developed last week. Was very powerful for me, and really makes me feel that there's a lot to focus on in that area to try to partner with, hear that voice, use tefillah as a tool to be able to connect with the broader reality, to be a part of it and not disjointed from it.
Yeah.
Not always a consciousness that I step into and feel.
Totally. Totally. I'll tell you the truth of what I've been realizing about Shehiyah and that kind of quieting before tefillah of L'chavenis libo lamakom, etc. is really about that. It's not about quieting your mind so that you'll be able to concentrate. It's about broadening your awareness so you'll be able to touch it all. That's where it changes from being meditation to being tefillah. It's a big shift. I was in terms of what's happening with that. What? That's the Jewish interest. That's the Lech L'chaim.
Relationship with the animal,
Because
not nullification of self.
Right, exactly. It's the attachment that we're looking for. not the detachment. And you can make a very easy error in that kind of like quieting. It's a detachment. Never, it's mispalali, so that they would be able to mispalal. It wasn't so that just be in that. They should be able to mispalal. That's mamash the shift. It's preparation for having that kind of broadened awareness. You do have to quiet your mind from the local chattering, and from the sensate input of the local. To kind of let go of that. The awareness broadens. Now I'm touching. Okay, now what voice comes from there? Other.
I'm curious about what presents it. Like we should be feel all the time. The ultimate partnership is to really be feel all the time. But again, at the same time, that seems to but like towards very strong push to another spot. You can't be feel all the time. You have to somehow engage the world in a more practical, tactile sense. And I'm curious how we find that balance.
Mm-hmm.
On one hand, like this is very strong push. No, you want to connect with the ultimate connection, you want to touch reality. Broaden yourself. Feel what's out there. Connect. Then that's something supposed to emerge. Versus no, you can't do that all the time. Like God, Torah, Chazal, we're gonna like constantly like stop whatever you're stopping discussion, stop what's going on, you have to do something. I'm not sure how those two sort of like fit.
Great, okay.
Like I'm being drawn towards the tefillah. I'm like, wait a minute, what about my mitzvot? What about other things that I have to live with?
Right. And so I hear you wondering are these, I mean, I'll kind of tease out something, right? Are these antithetical states? Are they can they be complementary? Can one actually be the overarching incorporation of the others? I mean, when Rabbi Yochanan says Halavai v'yitpalel adam kol hayom kulo, what does he mean by that? What does he mean by that? I mean, is that without Torah, or does not the Torah become a different kind of a Torah? Is that without mitzvah, or does the mitzvah become a different kind of a mitzvah? Is that without pursuit of parnasa, or does the pursuit of parnasa now become a different kind of pursuit of parnasa? Right? Okay, so we can leave that open, but yeah. Right.
That covers the chotek between Rafa and
Rav Hamnuna.
that
Sure, definitely covers that. Right.
So a set of sugyot there that are in many ways that same meaning and just puts exploration in Hakdama.
That's right.
That is very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. What's that?
We'll get there. Come on, guys.
We will. This is the Hakdama. Right. This is the Hakdama to Netivot HaShalom.